Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. I'm so excited to talk to Katie about all of the things that she's doing. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So, Katie, let's start. Let's have you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your business, and then we're going to talk about some other things.
Okay. Well, hello everybody. I'm Katie with Katie's Fiber Connection. I almost said the wrong name already. Um, I've been in fiber arts, like I would call it hardcore, for about 3, maybe 4 years now. I always wanted to do something crafty, but I could never find that one thing that I wanted to do. So ever since I was mid-teens, I don't know if anybody remembers. I don't think they're a national chain, but Frank's Nursery and Crafts. I don't know if it was local to Michigan or not, but they used to be a garden center slash craft store. So I worked there in high school, and that's where I started getting crafting ideas, and that's where I started blowing all of my money. Um, but it just kind of grew from there. Mostly counted cross stitch, a little bit of embroidery. Um, and my aunt tried to teach me how to knit, and that was just a hot mess. And I kind of put those down and said, I'm done. About 10, well, about 12 years ago now, a friend got me turned on to crocheting. So I started crocheting and I fell in love with it. And um, so then I started hoarding yarn, which is like everybody knows about the yarn stash and how scary it can get. So I started hoarding yarn. My poor husband, I don't think he knew the extent of my hoarding. And yeah, I'm lucky I'm still married. And he was just very nice about it. And he just watched the piles grow. And so finally I decided I got to do something to get rid of it. So that's when I started thinking about just like a business for craft shows, things like that. I sold like little baby hats and just little teeny tiny things that kept me busy and kind of kept me using up my stash. Um, you didn't see the bags that came home in the trunk, but um, so I just kind of developed from there, and then the pandemic hit, and I had had a child. I needed something to keep myself occupied, or else I was going to get in trouble. And I purchased a spinning wheel from her name was Amy, and she was actually in the Woodland Weavers and Spinners Guild, which is the local guild for the Grand Rapids area. And I didn't know she was part of the guild. I just saw a spinning wheel that looked like a good deal. It's a Jerry Jensen. It's a Tina. And during the pandemic, I taught myself how to spin. And then I thought, well, if I can spin, I can dye yarn. I mean, duh. How is that hard? That's the thought process that goes on. That's where I get into trouble. So I started dyeing yarn, and then I thought, well, if I can dye yarn, I can dye fiber. See, okay, people say it's a rabbit hole. I consider it a cliff where it's not like this awesome fall that like Alice in Wonderland. It's
Right?
like someone just kicked you off the cliff and you're done and you can't stop. So I pretty much do it all. I'll try everything once.
Right.
Won't know till you try.
Twice if it works out, right?
And if it doesn't work out, it just goes into that corner of the closet with all of the, like projects that I'm mad at that
Time
I
out. They're in timeout.
yes, timeout. That's a good thing to call it. Because I'm like, I'm mad at it. I'm just gonna put it over there and you find it 20 years later.
So I'm curious, do you spin what you dye?
Um, I do. I attempt to, but my problem is WAFA.
Oh, that's a
I
problem.
watch too many WAFA sales,
Ah,
and that's kind of the reason why I became a vendor, is because if I didn't, I would not have the income to keep purchasing the way I was.
Right.
I think my record was 14 packages in one weekend. Like, my husband is like, "What is going on?" I'm like, "It's not yarn, we're okay."
Right.
Um, so that's yeah, my problem is WAFA, but it's a good problem.
So are you saying that you buy fiber from WAFA vendors and then, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
I still haven't, um I still haven't sold handspun yarn yet. I'm trying to tweak my craft a little bit, but I don't have a problem buying anybody else's.
Handspun is a tricky sell sometimes.
It is, and there's always that worry that there's a weak spot in it or that something's not right, and I'm a perfectionist. And I've learned through dyeing that um this is one of the reasons why I dye the way I do is again, I'm a perfectionist. So if I'm going to dye a solid color, it better be solid and it better be uniform. Well, all indie dyers know that usually doesn't happen. You're going
Right.
to have variation. I mean, the acid level, your water temp, there's so many different things that could, and I have city water. So that pH could
Oh,
change on a drop of a hat.
right.
So my dyeing style is more I dye and I let the colors do what they want. And that's what I end up with. That's why I usually don't do repeatables
Yeah, me either.
because I can't, that's really stressful to do something the same way every single time
Right.
and make sure it's as close as you can get. I don't need that stress.
Right.
I have enough stress. I don't need that. So, and I actually like a lot of white in my dyeing. I
Oh.
think when you spin it, it makes it look gorgeous.
Hmm. Because of the contrast.
Hmm.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Yeah. I'm just always curious because I think, I have asked a lot of dyers and, and I know it's important for us to spin our own things, but I think it's hard to. And one, yeah, I've always got something waiting from a vendor that I would rather spin.
Yes, because you're so excited because it's not, I mean, you get excited about what you make, but
Right.
you're so excited to try someone else's.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at, I bet you I have 15 bats from Dunspun sitting over here.
Well, and it's
And I
so
have some from
exciting.
Jesse. I have some from Erica. I have some from so many people, and they're too pretty to touch.
Oh, well, once you start selling handspun, you'll have to buy more,
Well, yeah.
right? To keep yourself stocked.
Oh gosh. I mean, yeah,
All right.
that's
So
there's a
recently,
lot here.
so recently you had a name change, and now I am understanding why. But talk us through that a little bit.
Um, to go back a little bit in my story, my first ever business was called Crochet by Kate because then I was just crocheting.
Okay.
Um, my legal name's Catherine, and I go by Katie, but Kate just sounded easier to say in a business name. So I said Crochet by Kate, and it was Crochet by Kate for probably 8 or 9 years
Okay.
until I started dyeing. And then I thought, okay, I've got to change this because it's not really crocheting anymore. It's dyeing. So I thought Yarn by Kate, that would be awesome.
Right.
Did all the paperwork, changed everything. It's a big old pain. And finally got everything settled. And after about 2.5 years, 3 years,
Oops.
I'm like, oh, well, now Yarn by Kate just sounds like I just sell yarn.
Right.
And so I started thinking, I'm going to have to change this dumb name again. And I'm like, no. So I mean, it took me 6, 7 months to figure out a name to where I don't have to change it again, but it encompasses everything I could do with fiber.
Right.
And so I thought, okay, Katie's Fiber Connection.
Until
We're
you start,
done. That's the way it is. I'm dying with it there.
until you start painting or
Don't. I have some oil paint by numbers up in the closet over here that you can't see. And I don't know if the oil paint is good enough anymore because I started them when I was pregnant 7 years ago. That's how bad it is.
Oh, it's good though. What a wonderful creative process, right?
Yes. Yes. It just, I wish, and whenever I post something on Facebook about my crafting ADD, I have so many people that are like, yes, I do the same thing. I do the same thing. And it is frustrating, but at the same time, you're like, wow, my brain jumps so fast to all these different creative ideas. You just kind of rein it in a little bit and make it not so scatterbrained. And you're good.
Well, and do you find that one thing kind of inspires another?
Yes.
I'll get a bat from somebody and I'll love the colorway and I want to put my own spin on it. Or I'll get
Mhm.
yarn from somebody and I'll think, oh, I have to learn how to do that. Or, I think it's a good kind of self-fulfilling motivation.
Yes, that happened with dyeing. I was crocheting. I started okay, I'm going to admit this. I started my daughter's temperature blanket. Have you ever done anything like temperature related? Okay.
Yeah.
So you know how those can get to be a huge project real quick because you have to decide, am I going by weekly temperature, daily temperature,
Right.
and so of course I picked daily temperature. So it is going to be a queen size Afghan.
Yeah.
And I thought when I was starting that project, and by the way, I'm only through like the first week of February in 2017. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
She'll have it by the time she goes to college.
Mhm.
Um, because I'll start working on it and she'll go, oh, is that my blanket? And then she'll try to snuggle up with it. And I'm like, oh gosh, honey, it's like this big. you know, she makes me feel a little bad without realizing it.
Uh,
Um, but I started thinking, well, these aren't exactly the colors I want. Why can't I just dye my own yarn? And that's how it started. So I researched a little bit on dyeing yarn, and I'll tell you, going from just buying off the shelf to dyeing yarn was very intimidating for me
hmm.
because there's so many. I'm a very black and white person. I'm an accountant by day. I say accountant by day, fiber person by night.
Have it.
So there's a right and a wrong.
Okay.
And dyeing pulled me way out of my comfort zone
Oh.
into, well, you could do it this way or you could do it that way. And that was hard. That was a struggle.
So as a kind of a linear thinker, how do you make those decisions when you are dyeing a colorway?
The way I got around that was letting the dye do what it wants.
So do
Because,
you have like a general color scheme and then
yep, the only thing I control when I dye is whether there's already acid in the water or not. If there's already acid in the water, then I know I'm going to get tighter color and it's going to be a little more defined. But if I don't put acid in the water, I'm going to let those colors just flow and do what they want. And that way, I don't get upset with myself when it doesn't look exactly the way I want it. So I just say, these are the colors I'm going with, and I'm going to let it do its thing. And I've learned to just leave it.
I had no idea. So then do you for when you're because I'm not an acid dyer, I'm a botanical dyer. So
Mhm.
do you put the acid in afterwards for the one that okay.
Yeah, because, and I've wanted to do a video. I just started a YouTube channel a little bit ago. No one can search it because there's no videos on it yet. Um, but I've wanted to do a video of two pans showing this one, the yarn or fiber,
Yeah.
was soaked in. I use vinegar personally. I find it easier to use. Sometimes I'll use citric acid,
Oh,
but I don't like the extra step of making sure that's all dissolved before if I'm in a hurry, I'm
sure.
going to throw vinegar in. Um, so one pan with just, something that's already been soaked in vinegar, and then the next pan with nothing, just plain water. And
Okay.
you can watch it's really neat. I need to do a time lapse where you can
Ah,
watch what the colors do. The pan without the acid in it, it almost turns into like a watercolor effect where everything's blending and it looks all nice. But you have to be careful because if you bump the pan, you can really make those colors move around,
Okay, right.
you know. Um, and it's just neat to see the difference. It so I like watercolor more just because I just let the colors do what they're gonna do. And sometimes if you're not so rigid with, okay, this top part's gonna be blue and the next part's gonna be brown and the next part's gonna be red. If
Right.
you put a little bit of each color in there and let that color spread, those colors combined in the middle, in between those sections, and they
Oh,
sometimes make gorgeous colors on their own.
yeah.
And that's where you get twinges of like different colors.
Right.
And I also find when blend my own, I mix my own acid dyes. For instance, this weekend I just posted about I made a purple out of a red and a blue. Well, when I put the red and the blue together, I mixed them fairly well. And I knew this would happen because it's happened before, and this is what I was going for. I put that purple on the um, fiber without acid,
Okay.
and the colors broke,
Did they split? Okay. Uh-huh.
but they split. And the interesting thing was that the two colors that came out were a very pale blue, which was not the blue I put in there,
Okay.
and a pink. Those two, there was purple, and then there was a blue that kind of pulled out, and then a pink. It was so interesting. And those two colors were not something I used. It's the way the fiber
Right.
reacted with the dye, and it's just fun.
Oh, wow. So I'm as a not color theory person, I don't choose well, and botanical dyeing is different, but how do you choose like how did you choose that you wanted to do blue and red? Or if you want to do, three colors, or how do you put your colors together
Um, I
without
want to
giving away
say,
the
I
great
want to say, I want to say there's something like really fancy, but
Okay.
it's basically just me being a mad scientist.
Okay.
It's, I get done dyeing. I've done this a couple times, and every time, I don't know how this happens, it works out perfectly, but you can never recreate that color. What I do is when I'm done dyeing, I don't want to waste any dye. So I've done this. I'll just throw all the dyes in
Yep.
one container,
Yep.
mix it up really good and say, hope for the best, and just throw it in there. And it always turns out to be the most beautiful thing,
Isn't
but you
that
can't recreate it.
right?
So
Yeah.
you're like, oh, wow, look at this great thing I did. I can't do it again.
That's how I cook. Love it or hate it, you're never getting it again.
Well, and I wanted to tell you, I've tried botanical dyeing a couple times. I have morning glories in my yard, and they were bright red, like magenta morning glories.
Right.
And they turned a very, very pale peach.
Yeah, I would
It was
think.
beautiful.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I was experimenting with mordants,
Hmm.
and I have the big dinner plate hibiscus
Mm.
flowers, and they're again like a magenta, deep red. It's just this awesome color. One, I used vinegar in one, and I used alum
Hmm.
in another. One turned hunter green,
Oh.
and the other was, I believe the vinegar turned it green.
Hmm.
And I'm like, that was a red flower. How on earth did I get green?
I wonder if maybe it was the alum.
It
Um,
might have been.
red
I
red
don't
onion
know.
skins and alum turn green.
Okay.
Um, I don't think of either of those flowers as substantive, I don't think that color will last very long, but it's
No.
fun to experiment, and I love, I know it's chemistry, but boy, I don't understand it when it gives me stuff I don't expect. So that's so cool.
Well, and it was just something I wanted to try. I'm sitting
Yeah.
outside gardening going, huh, I wonder what this will do.
Throw it in the pot. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was fun, but I think because of the way I am, it is way too unpredictable. And I was like, okay, this looks great, but I'm going to go back to something I know what color is going to come out.
Right. And you do one color at a time, so it's really hard to do those combinations of
Hmm.
things unless you're doing them on the carder. Yeah.
Yeah, and I work full time, so I work anywhere from 40 to 45 hours a week. So I don't have, which I would love to have like a whole day to just walk through the process with one color and see what kind of shades you can get, but maybe someday I'll have the time.
So I was going to ask that. So fiber is not your full-time job. You have a full-time out of the home job. Okay.
Hmm.
All right.
Yep, I'm in finance and I've um I love it because it feeds my need for right or wrong answers.
Right.
I mean, if the balance sheet doesn't balance, you're wrong. If it does, you're right.
All right. So fibering on the weekends and in the evenings.
Yes,
And you have a kiddo.
I do. She'll be 7 in May.
Wow.
So and people have probably seen her a little bit, but she also helps me with some bats. I'm trying to get her into some fiber. Um, she's my resident color expert
Ooh.
because again, I get very rigid with colors and I overanalyze things and a bat especially. And she just picks whatever colors she wants and throws them together and it looks great. So if you ever get a really pretty bat from me, odds are it wasn't me.
Sure.
She picked the color. I just ran it through the carder.
Oh, that's great. So you alluded to doing some other crafts as well.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh goodness. Um, I like crocheting probably the most. Besides fiber. So besides dyeing and spinning, I'll kind of categorize those together. Um, Crocheting, I like being able to make something for someone that they can use. Not that they can't use something I've dyed, but that's kind of specific. So if you're going to give someone some fiber, or if you're going to give someone um, a bat that you've made, they really need to either felt or spin.
Right.
So crocheting, I can give someone a pair of gloves, or I
Mhm.
can give someone a hat. I can give someone a shawl. I can do a lot more things. And I do hope to knit someday. I can do spectacular things with a hook, which you give me two needles, and it's like I've got two left hands, and I have no idea what's going on. So, um, and Margot was visiting me last August, and she was here for Michigan Fiber Festival. We went together, and we didn't have time, but if I was going to learn to knit, I probably should have picked her brain a little bit because she's really good at knitting.
She is.
Um, but I enjoy cross stitch a lot. It's very calming, and I've been teaching Charlotte a little bit, so she's got her own. It's like this big, and it's got the huge X's, the
Yeah.
ones that you can't, those Reader's Digest that are so such big print.
Yeah, right.
That's what hers is like. And as I'm getting older, my eyes are changing, and I can, now with counted cross stitch, I'm kind of like this, like, "Oh, where's that good spot
Arm
where you
won't
can
be
see
long
stuff?"
enough. Yeah.
And hers, I don't have to do that. So maybe I should switch to those big ones.
Right.
I don't know. That'd be a good idea.
Do you ever
Um,
dye cross stitch yarn or embroidery yarn?
I have not yet.
Okay.
Um, that is a thought though.
Mm.
See, you can't do that to me.
I'm down that rabbit hole right now.
Oh, you are. What are you doing?
I ended up with some yarn. I rarely do anything with lace except for sometimes I'll chain ply it so it's thick enough for me to weave. But
Mm-hmm.
I ended up with some aloe yarn and a couple of
Oh,
other plant-based things. And so I'm dyeing them with botanicals, and they're, like they would be embroidery floss kinds of things. So I don't know, we'll see. I'll either sell them or I may do some I was thinking they would be also great for applying.
Yes.
So, we'll see. I'm thinking about maybe doing some gradients and some other things. So I don't know.
Oh, that'll be fun.
I've just dived down the hole. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's something I have not tried yet. Um, the one thing I would be worried about is that would tangle easy.
Oh, like when you dyed it?
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Because
I'm
it's
putting
so
mine on
fine.
hot and stirring it around. So
Mhm.
yeah, I use gear ties.
Oh, okay.
And they have little thin gear ties. So I use little thin gear ties and so every skein has its own, so I can pluck it out of the,
Hmm.
um, and it's tied in many places because I learned the hard way with
I
some
think
ways.
every dyer has done that,
Yeah,
where you're looking at it going, oh, this can't get that bad, and you throw it
right.
in, and
You
you're
throw it in the
good,
pot.
and then you're crying about an hour later.
This is not how I wanted to spend my weekend. Yep, right.
No, no, I use just like reusable zip ties.
Yeah.
And I've dabbled a little bit with resistance dyeing.
Hmm.
So I'll use those zip ties and put them as tight as I can on certain sections to get specific white areas.
Like a tie dye, like with a
Hmm.
rubber band. Oh.
Hmm. And it works really well, except sometimes it's really hard to get those zip ties back off.
Do you then over dye that with another color or is it white in the skein?
Sometimes I'll do both. I'll
Okay.
leave just a couple white ones and then I'll over dye some of the other ones.
Okay.
I I do so many different types. I watch Chemnitz a lot.
Okay.
She is a, you got to remember what she is. She's either a chemist. She's got like her PhD in
Okay.
chemistry,
Uh-huh.
and she does all these dyeing videos, and there's just really neat to watch. And that's where I get some of my ideas from.
There's just so many different techniques.
Oh, I know. But
Have you done, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, I can't imagine having that science knowledge in your head and
Right.
then applying it to something totally different, but it still works.
Right.
Because I mean, I don't like science, to be
Right.
honest.
I don't even almost want to know sometimes, I
Mm,
just
mm-mm. I math and English. Those are my two things. And science, no. Econ, oh my gosh, forget that. Because you can argue your point all the time.
right.
Who wants to do that?
Yeah.
Give me a right or wrong answer. Come on.
So have you tried speckle dyeing?
I have.
Do you like it?
Mm,
Okay.
I do, once I figured out how to keep the speckles
Speckled.
from bleeding.
Yes. Yeah.
That's that was tricky. But again, I was doing a lot of this during the pandemic.
Hmm.
So there was not as many resources available as there could have been. So, I mean, because the guild had quit meeting and a lot of stores weren't open, and I was still working full time. Um, but unfortunately, Charlotte's daycare was closed. So I had to work from home,
Hmm.
which was an experience in itself. Um, and she was just going to turn 3 at the time. So with 2 full-time parents working, trying to watch her at the same time, you don't get a lot of work done.
Right.
Um, and we were just potty training, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. Um, but I found that if you soaked the yarn or fiber heavily in vinegar and then you speckle, it stops those speckles from spreading so much.
Okay.
And then some people also mixed the dye with a little bit of citric acid.
Uh, so same kind of sticking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, I've done the snow dyeing. I don't
Hmm.
know if you've ever snow dyed.
I've seen it. Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
And I've worked with one of my favorites that I did. which was interesting, is I dyed with ice cream sprinkles.
Oh,
Mm-hmm. Because anything that has food coloring in it
right,
can dye. I mean, you remember growing up, what
right,
would happen if your mom found out that you spilled Kool-Aid on your shirt?
right. Yeah, I
It's not
started with
coming out
Kool-Aid dyeing.
because it already had the acid in it and it's dyed, it's done. My little sister, when she was like 2, threw high C on my mom's curtains.
Oh.
And I'll tell you what, that high C was still in those curtains when they came down like 30 years later. She always just like put a chair in front of them.
All she needed to do was dye the whole thing in high C.
I know, but it was that orange, weird orange color, and they were cream. So yeah, but and I like snow dyeing, and my favorite because I can do it with Charlotte is if you do the ice cream sprinkles, or if you can do like Skittles.
Hmm.
You can do Kool-Aid dyeing. Um, the only thing when you use uh food, like especially the ice cream sprinkles, is you have to be able to melt that sugar. Because when you're using those sprinkles, you want the dye, but you don't want the sugar.
Right.
So the ice cream sprinkles are actually done in the microwave.
Okay.
You have to soak the dye in vinegar or the yarn in vinegar, and then you put all the ice cream sprinkles on it, and you wrap it in like saran wrap,
Right.
and you put it in like
So
kind of
essentially
like
it steams, right?
a
Yeah. Okay.
yep, because I didn't have a steaming pan at the time.
Uh-huh.
So I just did it in the microwave, and the thing gets hot fast.
Right.
So you put it in for like 2 minutes, pull it out, let it cool off for a second, put it in for like another 2 minutes, and
Okay.
then you unroll it. But you have to make sure that you rinse it in pretty hot water
Okay. To
because you've
dissolve
got to
the
get,
sugar.
hmm
Hmm.
and if you let, it's kind of like lanolin. If you try to wash it out and you don't get it all the first or second time
You just
and
forget.
it redeposits,
Got it.
it's not coming out.
Huh.
No. So I have one skein of yarn that's in timeout that is just sticky. And I have not figured out what to do with it yet.
Hmm.
But it's still over there. I'll figure out something.
Okay. It's just waiting with its nose in the corner.
Yes. And I did start to weave. So, and my husband laughs because I promised him I would never weave.
Oh, why? Because it's
But I
what.
rationalize it as, you know, I am doing this yarn. I'm going to have all this yarn. And if I don't feel comfortable selling it, I'm going to have to do something with it. Why not weave?
Right.
See, it's that cliff.
Right. Well, and weaving is a great place for yarn that isn't perfect,
Hmm.
you know? I mean that's why I started weaving because I don't spin perfect intentionally. I don't spin perfect. So
Hmm.
weaving is lovely with texture in a way that, trying to make gauge on a sweater is not.
Yes. And weaving, I feel like weaving's more forgiving,
Yes.
where if you make a mistake, sometimes the only person that knows you made a mistake is you.
Right. Or it
Because
can
you
be a
can,
design element again in a way that, maybe in crochet or knitting it just can't.
hmm yeah, again, I had promised him I wouldn't weave. And then my coworker, she knows about all my fiber art stuff. And she said, "Hey, Katie, I have a friend who has an old loom in an attic. It's been there for 30 years." And I'm like, "What are you doing to me?"
And now you
And
have a loom?
I have a four harness Norwood
Oh, I love my Norwood. They're
sitting in
beautiful.
the living room. It had been in that attic for 30 years, hadn't moved. It still had some old warp on it. I mean, which was disgusting.
Right.
We had to dismantle it to get it out of the farmhouse because the farmhouse is probably 110, 120 years old. It's one of those really cool. I
Wow.
mean, the stairs are so narrow. you wonder how these people got up and down these things.
Right,
And the
or got the
stair
lift up
height,
there. Yeah.
well, and the stair height was like not the normal step height. It was like taller.
Uh-huh.
And we had to take the railing off the side of her hallway to get it out.
Wow.
We're like dismantling this lady's house. And it came with, it has the loom and then it has a sectional beam or
Right.
warping at the end. And then it has the rack.
Yeah. For warping.
Um, mhm.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna weave. There is totally somebody at the guild that I could just clean this up and give it to.
Uh-huh.
All I cared about is that it doesn't go to waste and it doesn't get burned or thrown away.
How's that going?
It's in my living room. It's
And
been cleaned up, and I will tell you what, would think that thing was brown, and as soon as you start conditioning that wood, that cherry red just comes
yeah,
out and it is
yeah,
gorgeous.
it is. It's one of my favorites.
And I mean, it is a sturdy, it's like a workhorse. The thing is just, I mean, all it's missing is the crank handle,
Okay.
which I've heard is common
Right.
because when it's removed and it's put somewhere else, people don't know what it's to and they just toss it.
Right.
Um, but I I kept it. I mean, and I didn't pay anything for it.
Right.
So I've kept it and it means a little bit more to me because they were built here.
Right.
This one, I think mine is Baldwin,
Mm-hmm.
which is an hour and a
There
half
were a
north
couple
of
of
me.
different makers, I think.
There was
Yeah.
Baldwin. Well, they moved, it was first in Chicago.
Right.
And then they moved, I believe, to Baldwin and then to Fremont. Fremont is actually where my husband grew up. So it was Fremont for a long time, and then they got bought by somebody.
Right.
But I love it. So it's a permanent fixture in the living room now.
That's exciting.
It is, but
I'm
then it
already-
started the other looms showing up. I mean, if I can't start on that one until I work on a littler loom first,
Oh.
right?
Yeah. So do you have a rigid heddle?
Yes.
Okay.
And I have several tapestry looms.
Awesome.
There's one hanging on the wall over here.
Okay.
Um, I have some of the little, like a little mini triangle loom. My daughter has one of those pot holder looms,
Yeah.
so we're working on that. So yeah, falling off a cliff.
Wonderful. Oh, all right. Well, I think we're going to pause here. I would love for you to tell people where they can find you. Talk about your social media and your website, and if you do in-person shows.
Oh yes. Excuse me. I Most of the time I'm in WAFA. But other than that, I have a Facebook page. It's Katie's Fiber Connection. And I've just gotten my Instagram account, I think, fixed.
Okay.
I'm not super good at technology. I'm so lucky that my husband works in technology and I call him my IT support.
Nice.
So if I have a problem in here, I can just yell to him if I have a problem. And he'll come up and try to help. So And the name change has been rough, trying to change it on Facebook or change it on Etsy or change it on Instagram. It seems like it should be easy, but it's not.
Yeah.
It takes a while because some of them, which one was it? I think it was Etsy. Like it gives you this big old warning. You can only do this once.
One time. Right.
And if you have any problems or you type something in wrong, it's done. That's
Yep.
it.
Yep.
So, oh, and on Etsy, it's Katie Fiber Connection because I was one letter short. Like it wouldn't let me do one let.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, oh, great. Um, my website is still Yarn by Kate. If you do Katie's Fiber Connection, you'll reach my Katie's Fiber Connection page. It's just not up yet. So it'll direct you. It'll say, hey, we're still working on this.
And send you to the old one.
And send
Okay.
you to the old one.
Okay.
I had hoped it would have been done by now, but there's so many things that go into it because I have my Etsy linked through the website and trying to get that all
Okay.
sorted out. Yeah, so when you go on my website, like right now would be Yarn by Kate. If you go to where all the inventory is, like to see what I have available, if you click on that item, it funnels you right to Etsy.
Okay.
So that way I don't have to have a separate paying structure on my website yet.
Okay. Got it.
But I'm in this year, I'm doing 3 fiber festivals. I'm in the Michigan Alpaca Festival, which is next month.
Okay.
Tip of the Mitt Fiber Fair, which is in Petoskey, and that's the first weekend in June.
Yeah.
And then I'm in the Northern Michigan Fiber Festival the end of September.
Okay.
Those are like fiber festivals that I do. I do some craft shows, but those are more local, and that's more kind of trinkety stuff that I still make. I
Okay.
use my hand spun a lot to make like Christmas ornaments, things like that, and that's kind of stuff sells at craft shows.
All right. So you've got lots going on.
Yeah. I try to keep myself out of trouble.
Sounds like you're doing a good job. All right. So I would love to open up for questions. If anybody's got questions or things that you want to ask Katie, now would be the time to do that.
No science questions.
No science questions. Hi, Margot.
Hi, Teddy. Hi, Katie.
Hi,
You should
Margot.
have told me you wanted to learn to knit. I would have brought up the sticks and string. I would have taught you.
I know, but we were so busy.
We could have taken time. There was time. But anyways, I'm so glad you're doing this. This is awesome. And it's really great to hear how you started and everything. So, that's always really cool. And I'm really glad Teddy reached out to you on
Oh,
this.
thank you.
Yeah. But you didn't show us your merino. You didn't tell us about your special relationship with 2BU. I mean, that's a really big deal. So
You mean the other WAFA vendor that gets me in trouble monthly?
yes.
Um,
And me, your favorite enabler. You got to get that one, Katie.
one of my my main fiber now is merino. I have a not aversion to other fibers, but I'm fairly sensitive. So I know there's tons of awesome fibers out there, but merino is my go-to because it's something that doesn't make me itch. And I'm working with blending merino with other like Teeswater. I have a merino Romney, things like that. And I'm working on, okay, if I get half and half, I think I'm okay.
Okay.
But I tend to buy a lot of merino from 2BU and Cody and Kim, and they get me in trouble all the time. And this last time, what I did is I took all of the fleece that I purchased from them last November, December, January, and February, and I took them up to Zeilinger's wool mill.
Okay.
I've been doing this for about 2 years. I make sure that I have something to bring them when they tell me my other stuff's done. Because why waste a trip and not bring something up there to do?
Right? Yeah.
I mean, come on. And you can always go to the Christmas store when you're up there. But I brought 48 pounds of merino up to them. And John Zeilinger, he's 4th generation that runs the mill right now with his wife. He he loves the merino. He said he runs it personally because he loves how fine it is and how soft it is.
Mhm.
And so I have it made into combed top.
Oh, okay.
And that's mostly what I dye right now.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm experimenting with blends, and I don't do too much with the blends. If I get a blend back, I think the last time I received like 4 pounds of merino Romney back. And so 4 pounds, it's kind of, I don't want to get into it and get loving it so much and then run out.
Sure.
So I just always have, I don't think I have any right here. I don't, but my merino combed top is fairly local then, because I purchased it from Cody and Kim, and then it goes and it's processed in Frankenmuth, and then it's here.
So Colorado and Michigan. How
Yes,
exciting.
Cody's probably not too far from you.
He's kind of on the other end of the state, but
Oh,
yeah,
is he?
yeah. So,
Yeah.
so the braids that you're dyeing are farm fibers.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yep.
that's exciting.
Yeah, they're 100% Cody's. And again, so like here, I'll grab one. So this is the combed top.
Wow,
It's super fluffy.
that's
It's
beautiful.
super awesome. And I love it.
Okay, so I want to ask about processing because it's very intimidating to me. I never feel like I have enough fleece to take to the mill. So when you say 48 pounds, I think, oh my God. So so when you does Cody send you the fiber and then you send it to the mill?
Correct. What I do is during Cody's sales, I purchase whatever I
Right.
want. And then when I can't say enough about Cody's fleece. They're always so nice. And I usually just give them an extra shake when they're here, because when you bring in to the mill, you're charged based on incoming weight.
Right. Yeah. So you don't want
So
to have any extra.
yes,
Okay.
and
So you're
the
not skirting or anything. You're just
no, because they come pre-skirted. I mean, Cody
oh,
does a fantastic, Cody and Kim do a fantastic job.
okay.
So, I mean, I might find something here or there, but it's not big. But I try to pick out any big pieces of VM, or I give them a good shake. I mean, it doesn't feel like a lot, but you could get rid of a half a pound of dirt.
Right. Right.
Um, so I do that, and then I kind of separate, okay, this will be combed top. I've got this extra over here. Maybe I'll blend this with something that I get from another vendor, or I did a merino. No, it didn't have any merino. It was 100% Teeswater
Hmm.
roving, and that was surprisingly nice. Um, and Zeilingers did that as well. But so I bring it to Zeilingers, and Zeilingers, I can't say enough about them either, because they're just I I contacted them and said, "Hey, I want to start processing my own, having someone process this fiber. Where do I start?" So my husband and I went up and we got a tour of the mill. I mean, she took us everywhere. Her name was April. And we looked at I mean, in these machines, I don't know what it is, but these giant iron machines that have that smell,
Right.
it's that old smell where these things are 100 years old and they're still doing the same thing over and over, and they're doing it so beautifully.
Mm.
So we got to see the big machines. The neat part was seeing where they wash the fleece. Um, Unfortunately for merino, it has so much lanolin
Yeah.
that, for instance, I brought, I believe it was 34 pounds, 30 pounds in, and I received about 17 pounds back.
So half loss.
Half
Not all,
loss
not
because,
all of that is lanolin though, right? You lose some in the machine.
correct, some in
That's
the
it.
machine, a little bit of dirt, VM, things like that. But I mean, merino is going to be the largest, as far as I know, the breed that would have the most loss
because
of the heavy lanolin.
okay. Yeah, it's a pretty
Um,
greasy fleece.
It
Yeah.
is. And but Xylinger's gives you back the merino noil.
Oh,
So everything that would kind of be waste, they give you these giant bags of all of the noil that they gathered in the processing, and they give it back to you.
oh, fun.
So yeah, so what I've started to do, which hopefully I'll have for sale eventually, is I've started to kind of pick through it a little bit, get all the VM out of it because it is waste, so it has a
Right.
lot of VM.
Sure.
But and then dye it and then
The
add it
diet?
to mats.
Oh, that'll be awesome.
Yeah, that way it's not wasted.
Right.
Um, but yeah, here I've got one thing. This is what I picked up.
Is it
So
top?
that is a giant bag of merino top.
Top. Okay.
Yeah. So that's how it comes back from the mill.
Wow.
It smells so nice.
I know.
But it's important. What I would say to people that want to experiment with bringing fiber to a mill, again, I'm not an expert, but find a mill that will work with you and help educate you a little bit.
Right.
Because I mean, they are the experts.
Right.
I asked him, John, if I could get some merino roving done, and he looked at me and he goes, I wouldn't do roving. He goes, this needs to be top.
Okay. So for people who are here who might not know the difference between the two, help us.
Top goes through an extra process to align all the fibers in one,
Okay.
like they're all together.
Right.
Roving is kind of, it's all, they're going every which way.
So woolen as opposed to worsted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
And top is going to be a little more slippery when you
Right.
spin it. So when I teach drop spindle classes, I generally, excuse me, don't give people merino top.
Right. Because woo, clunked. Right. Yeah.
Yes, I want something that's grippy and that's gonna give them a little bit of resistance so that they can learn without getting super frustrated.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's find a mill that can at least give you a little bit of guidance.
Yeah.
And when I've brought, 4 or 5 different breeds in, and I looked at John and say, what do I do? I said, I want all these processed, but what would you suggest? And he'll look through all of them and say, this should be this should be this, but you can do what you want. And I'm like, fine, go with it.
That's great.
He has never steered me wrong.
So do you have a minimum amount of poundage that you take or that they take?
Yes, that would be my next point is make sure you read the minimums.
Right.
The minimums will always be incoming weight.
Right.
So that's something you need to prepare for.
Right. Because outcoming is not going to be that. Yeah.
No, don't be surprised if it's
Half.
like, yeah, I would say unless it's merino, you might get 70%.
Right.
Especially if the fleece is clean. So take the time
Yes.
to try to clean it a
Prepare
little bit.
correctly. Yes.
But Xylinger will also take wool that's pre-washed. So if I wanted to, I could wash it here, get the lanolin out, and then still give it to them to process.
Which would save a little bit of money, maybe in the long run, depending upon how long it took. Because our money.
And I've had merino have the lanolin redeposit back on it.
Yes.
And I would rather pay them to do it.
Right.
Because it was so neat. Their setup, they have these giant like iron bathtubs all set up. and each one has its own spigot, its own everything, and there's tags hanging on them as to who the fibers are and what kind it is.
And it follows that fiber as it goes. Yeah.
And but I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what a neat way to reuse iron bathtubs
Yeah.
because they hold the heat
Oh, sure.
and it helps keep the temperature regulated.
Huh.
But man, that room could have been awesome for having a facial. It was so humid in there.
Yeah.
So humid. And then to dry their fleece, they use the attic.
Oh,
I mean, they don't have a ton of fancy things. They use what they have. And so when they're drying the fleece, it's all up in this attic. And she said, we just use the natural heat up here as much as we can.
Hmm.
She goes, we just have some extra fans blowing and that's it.
right.
So, but yeah, don't be intimidated by it at all. Just make sure you get a relationship with the mill.
Right. Mostly it's a weight thing for me, because my
Mhm.
herd isn't very big, and I'm adding some more sheep in a couple of days. I'll have 4, so that's not a lot to send.
No, but also you could blend.
Right. And I have, what?
Pregnant. There's going to be more.
Who's pregnant?
The sheep.
Oh, right. Toot says there's gonna be more sheep. It's true. They'll come
But
and
that's good.
August or April 12th we'll have lambs. So, yeah.
Yay. I want pictures.
Oh yeah. Oh, don't worry.
But if you do roving, like for instance, Xylingers, the minimum I believe is 10 pounds.
Yeah.
So it's not terrible. It's the combed top that's a higher weight minimum. That's 30, I believe.
Because
30
it
pounds.
goes through, it probably loses more because it goes through that last process.
Mhm.
Got it.
And Xylingers is the only place I know a lot of other WAFA vendors that use them. I've heard as far down as Kentucky
Mhm.
because they can't find anybody else that will run merino combed top
Oh, huh.
because it's such an involved process with the extra lanolin, the extra washing, and being combed top. It's so much extra work.
Interesting.
So,
Yeah. What I'll have is gonna be pretty dry. So,
but that's good. That means you'll get a lot back.
right. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I kind of yacked on there. Anybody else who wants to
That's okay.
find it? I know. I'm just fascinated with the process and I love to learn about it. So that was awesome. All right. Well, in that case, Katie,
Well, I hope I didn't put everybody to sleep.
no, this was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh
for
no,
doing
thank you
this.
for asking. I hadn't even ever thought that I could say anything that anybody would listen to. So, it's neat being able to talk about it with other fiber fanatics
Yes.
because everybody knows if you start talking fiber sometimes to people, their eyes just like glaze over.
Right. They're
And
not
it's like
grateful.
you're speaking another language, and like if you go up to someone and say, "Oh yeah, I won at Yarn Chicken." They're like, "Wait, what?"
Right. There
They
was
don't understand how exciting that is.
right.
So I'm excited to get to talk to people that know and kind of share my fiber nerdness.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for being with us this evening. I'll be back next week. Not sure who it is next week. They might not even know either. We'll see. All right. Thanks so much, Katie. Everybody have a wonderful weekend or a
Thanks,
wonderful
you
evening.
guys.
Bye.
Have a good night.